With WesternUnion.com's 4-star rated mobile app, send money fast virtually anywhere for just about anything. Download the free Western Union mobile app today from iTunes or the Play Store, or visit WesternUnion.com to learn more.
Can you feel it?
Durant for three, bingo! Right down the chute, Kevin Durant.
NBA Lockdown with Bruce Bowen.
Gets it to James. Here's a three for the win. Oh, it is good!
The NBA Lockdown podcast with Bruce Bowen. Along with three-time NBA champion Bruce Bowen, here's ESPN.com NBA columnist Israel Gutierrez.
Welcome into another edition of the NBA Lockdown podcast with Bruce Bowen. I'm Israel Gutierrez. Despite some controversy, some serious controversy, the playoffs continued this weekend.
Doc, were you included in or made aware of the decision to wear the black armbands and to take off the...
I knew about it. Didn't voice my opinion. Wasn't thrilled about it, to be honest. But if that's what they want to do, you know, that's what they want to do.
That was Doc Rivers after his team lost 118-97 in Golden State, or in Oracle Arena in Oakland, to tie that series at 2. Obviously, the most important subject on everybody's mind were the comments from the audio tape that was supposedly Clippers owner Donald Sterling making racist remarks. And Bruce, wanted to ask you if you thought that had any effect on the game, because we saw what the players did. They had their T-shirts inside out. They took their jersey or their warm-ups off and left them at center court. They wore black socks and armbands and wristbands, depending on the player, as a silent protest, making a clear statement. Did you think that sort of lingered onto the game and the Clippers' energy was affected by it?
Yes, I do, Izzy. And one of the hardest things in life, I think more than just sports, is to put aside the emotional times of whatever's going on in your world. And this is a situation where, unfortunately, it does take a lot of attention. And here it is, you're preparing for a possible NBA championship, the process of it. It takes a serious focus. It takes a one concentrated goal. And here it is, this comes out, your employer, it takes away from it. There is no way that you can necessarily say, oh, it didn't affect me, because it does, Izzy. I mean, especially in today's society, there was a time where maybe these things, it wouldn't have spread like this. You know, I think about Jackie Robinson and Bill Russell and the things that they had to go through so that players like myself, or former players like myself, and current players today have the opportunity to play a game that they love and to feel like they are treated equal and people think of them on the same level. But unfortunately, that's not the case. But more importantly, I think Jackie and Bill, especially Bill Russell, had to do it at an even greater level. And it's hard for players today, the young players, the young nucleus of the Clippers, to really have someone step up and say, hey, fellas, you know, even though this is going on, we have to go out and still concentrate on the game. And I don't fault anyone from the Clippers that, you know, that they played the way they did. It's a byproduct of being human. But it's one of those deals where you wish they had someone that could have kind of taken that negative situation and say, hey, fellas, we're going to have our time to deal with this. Let's try and focus the best way that we can on the game at hand.
Well, I think it's impossible to get your mind off of it. I think it's impossible to do, to put it aside and say, hey, let's get this game and focus on this game, because they know that everybody's watching them, the Clippers in particular. Mm-hmm. If they would have done nothing at all, then it would have looked like weakness on their parts, and that's the last thing they wanted to do. Right. And so all that whole process, that whole thought process of spending the night before trying to figure out what you're going to do to address this situation takes away entirely from preparing for the game, takes away your mental attention. And if you're not focused in on those little things, your energy's not going to be there. It's just not. And you've got a team in Golden State that was clearly going to come out this aggressive regardless of what the situation was. I mean, Steph Curry didn't come out firing because, the Clippers look vulnerable, let me take a chance and go offensively. He did that because he was down 2-1 playing at home, and if they would have lost this game, this series is over. So it's hard to say exactly how much it affected the outcome of the game, but here's Mark Jackson discussing that very subject.
I believe everybody was affected by what took place. I don't believe it was just the Clippers. It was insulting to all of us. At the end of the day, we played extremely well today, and we won the ball game. I think both teams were somewhat bothered by what has taken place in the last 24 hours. But my guys just played with great energy, great effort, and now we go to L.A.
I believe in that. Like, I believe there's a unity factor, obviously, and I believe that the Warriors were just as shocked and appalled and probably spent the night discussing the situation, but not what they had to do about it, obviously. They just kind of had to watch what the Clippers were going to do because there was nothing, collaborative that was going to happen. So they had a little bit more mental freedom. But Steph Curry was just – and I said this last time we had a podcast, Bruce, where he needs to look to score first and then – worry about the dishing after that, and he was clearly on the offensive mode and looking to put his scoring ability out there first.
Izzy, the fact that they're down 1-2, this is where your leaders step up even more so. Say, you know what, fellas, hey, I'm going to show us the way. I'm going to do my part so that at the end of the day, I can truly say that I did everything within my ability to make sure that we could possibly get a victory. And that's what you saw. It was a crazy energy in there yesterday, Izzy. And it was a little mixed, though. It wasn't the energy of two rivals. It was an electricity in the air of basketball because this is one of the greatest games to play, and you see two good teams going against each other. But it was also that Golden State brought the fight to Clippers, and it's understandable that the Clippers had a little bit more going on their minds, but to jump out to the lead that they did, it was just I don't think it was enough for the Clippers to have to fight back and try and take a lead in that building yesterday. Steph wasn't going to allow that to happen. We saw that in the fact that he went off in the first quarter scoring the way he did.
Yeah, and the thing I like about it is, like I said, it set the tone for the game, and the little things like that come with it, like the lineup change that Mark Jackson made, for example, starting Draymond Green instead of Jermaine O'Neal. That when Steph's going off and it really the offense looks really good, then they can sort of trust in the offense, and Draymond's in there, so he's going to add a ball movement element that Jermaine O'Neal didn't add, and then all of a sudden everything looks good. They have the counters when Steph Curry is, maybe defended better or double teamed, and all of a sudden, you've got layups and dunks for Draymond Green or Andre Iguodala or David Lee, and as a unit they shoot 55%. And then you've got, I think, one of the critical elements if they're going to really get back or come back and win this series is Harrison Barnes. Harrison Barnes has been playing really well, and he was 6 for 7 in 25 minutes yesterday with 4 assists and 15 points. So all that, I think, sort of is a trickle-down effect from what Steph Curry does to kickstart that offense. So, again, not sure how much it would have made a difference if there wouldn't have been a controversy before this game. But that was, to me, the difference. Steph Curry's aggressiveness and, that lineup change that Mark Jackson made. Now, all that said, it really still comes down to, the conversation of Donald Sterling's comments, and even the Warriors players recognized they were affected by this, and that includes Andre Iguodala.
I feel bad for every single player in the NBA. It's just not the Clippers. There's a partnership with all the owners and revenue sharing. One owner represents every owner in our league. Just like when one player makes a mistake, it's a black eye for the whole body of players. So it's not just about the Clippers. It's about every single player who goes out there and gives it their all every single night for our fans. And it's a sad situation that someone feels a certain way about the majority of the players who are in this league.
Yeah, Bruce, I just want to transition here to just talking about the Sterling issue. And what was your first thought when you heard those comments in terms of what the outcome was going to be? Because I'm pretty sure you, having played in the league and having known Donald Sterling's history, weren't shocked out of the words that were supposedly coming out of his mouth.
Yeah, no, Izzy, I wasn't shocked. I'm 42 years old. I've been able to understand that even though we would like to think that everyone is treated the same and equal, that is basically everyone is judged by the content of the character within who they are, I know that that's not the case. And, you have people that believe like him or believe that racism is a good thing. You have people that are just, they're ignorant to the fact, Izzy. And the only way that you can combat those type of situations, from my opinion, Izzy, is, number one, don't react with the mindset of the emotions. You have to take time, and it hurt me because I have to teach these things. It let me know that I have to teach even more to my kids that, hey, even though, we want to be equal, we want to do things a certain way, I still have to teach my kids that sometimes that doesn't happen. And I believe that we're better equipped when we understand that maybe things may not go the way that we would like them to, but we still have to, I think, keep true to our character in the midst of adversity. I know I said something about Jackie Robinson earlier, Izzy, and he is the one that I think about most in these situations because he was the only one in the game. He didn't have a brotherhood as far as other players on different teams to necessarily bounce ideas off of or to kind of commiserate with. He took it all upon himself so that we could continue to go forward in sports. And that's my biggest thing. I hoped that no one would do anything that would be detrimental to the game, detrimental to all the things that we've accomplished as minorities to get into the game of basketball. And I know the things that were said were hurtful and things of that nature, but think about Jackie Robinson when he's at bat and he had to deal with a manager like Ben Chapman yelling everything, calling him everything but a child of God, and still to have the folks to go on and do his job. It's bigger than just the players right now, Izzy. This can be huge as far as 10 years from now, people looking back and saying, wow, look at how those players handled it. And I'm really glad that they didn't boycott or anything like that, because I don't think nothing is accomplished there. I think things are accomplished by you holding true to your character and content of who you are and moving forward and playing the game and just dealing with this and more or less educating others so that we can move beyond something as silly as this.
Yeah, I think boycotting was something, it was an extreme option, and but I do think it would have been a powerful option to take. It would have hurt fans, but I think they would have seen the bigger picture. I mean, you gotta think about this. I mean, the difference between the Jackie Robinson time and this situation is that now, our mindsets have changed so much where anything that you hear like this is shocking versus, whatever that manager was you mentioned, Ben Chapman. And I'm sure Ben Chapman, I'm sure it was him, and I'm sure it was plenty of other people yelling things at Jackie, and it wasn't as nearly as shocking. It was probably, commonplace to hear that type of stuff. So that's where the difference is. And then you've got, this guy, Deadspin, had the extended videotape, or audio tape rather, and, this guy's got a slave owner's mentality. He just does. He said his girlfriend V said, do you know that you have a whole team that's black that plays for you? And he said, do I know? I support them. I give them food and clothes and cars and houses. Who gives it to them? Does someone else give it to them? Do I know what I have? Who makes the game? Do I make the game, or do they make the game? Is there 30 owners that created the league? It's a classic sort of, old slave owner's mentality, frankly. And if you are playing for the Clippers, that has to, and our person, our minority, our African American in particular, that has to just cut right to your heart to think, man, that man is literally the owner of the team that I play for. Like that has to be something that you at least think about not playing, not participating in this man's little game. So that's where I thought it would have been a powerful statement. But I think, honestly, what they did and that vision, or that image, is going to last for a long time. It's probably going to be, not probably, it's definitely going to be one of the, the low marks in the history of the Los Angeles Clippers. Like, you're going to put together a video of Clippers history in the past 50 years or 20 years from now, 50 years from now. That's going to be a prominent part of it. So I think they had to do something, and that was a good way to do it. Honestly, Bruce, I feel bad for Magic Johnson getting dragged into this, and here's Magic discussing the issue because he was, named or supposedly in a picture with the girlfriend in an Instagram post that started the whole conversation that was on the audio tape. So here's Magic discussing his part in this.
Well, he said, "Don't bring me to the to the game.
Don't bring magic.
Don't bring magic on the tape." So, no problem. I have no problem with that. And so I won't be going. And then he said, "Don't other African Americans? They're not welcome either." And so this is not good. This is not good, and it's not good for not just the league, but just for America. You know, this is not good. And then I think about Jalen, the fact that we have made him money, but we're not welcome at the game. And so that's you know, you can't get over that. And that's why everybody's upset. Black, white, Latino, everybody is upset at Donald Sterling right now.
Let me ask you, Bruce, because the punishment for this, to me, it's a tricky situation. I mean, to be able to punish stupidity without any sort of illegal acts is tough, because the league has kind of turned looked the other way on a few things with Donald Sterling. They weren't able to penalize him with some of his business practices that, you know, historically showed some racist actions. And now to be able to punish him, I think you have to. I think you look weak if you don't. I think your players will lose sort of faith in the system that is, you know, basically run by these 30 owners. But it's still tricky. To me, you know, there's got to be a suspension, but what does a suspension to an owner really mean? I guess he can't be part of daily activity. He can't be at the games. And personally, I'm wondering if that actually hurts him. You know, I'm sure he's a little insulted. I'm sure he'd be insulted by it, but I don't know if that really hurt him to not be around even for a full season, as long as he doesn't have to sell the team, because I don't think there's any way you can force him to sell the team. So I don't know, Bruce. Like, what do you think the proper penalty is here?
Yeah, I think the proper penalty would be a suspension, Izzy, and a hefty fine. You know, it just puts such a black eye on the league, and this is what I hope, that when the decision, because nobody's going to be happy with his punishment, Izzy. Someone's always going to say, "Oh, he should have had this too," and he should. But again, you brought up the point. How do you punish the guy who owns the team? You know, you can't necessarily take it away from him. So I think a suspension, maybe a year suspension and a hefty fine, that he's not able to come in contact with the team, and also seek some help. Now, and I say seek help from a standpoint of, you know, these are the things where maybe if he's educated more about how his words affect people, and then there's possibly the remorse of what he has said. But this is someone that's, I don't know how old Donald Sterling is, but he's older, so he's, a lot of times people like that are set in their ways, and they've been that way for quite some time. It didn't just happen for them. So I think it's fair to say that, you know, we don't know what will be a sufficient penalty. And I just hope that more than anything else, that when it is handed down and everyone accepts that, so that they can move on, Izzy. It's always going to, as I said earlier, there's going to be people to say, well, he should have gotten this or he should have gotten that. Well, let's just deal with what he gets and move on from there.
Well, I will say this, though, in terms of the absence of Donald Sterling from games or even any daily activity from the team, if that were to happen, it might definitely be a good – well, let's rephrase that. It will definitely be a good thing for the players involved, at least based on the history of his actions, even toward his own players, like Baron Davis, who spoke about the subject on a Grantland podcast, Brian Koppelman's Grantland podcast. He said not only did the owner curse at him during games, but it gave him anxiety when he showed up.
He used to heckle me all the time. He called me a They referred to me as like the devil, or like crazy. I mean, he would literally like cuss at me like, "Why are you shooting the ball? You should stop shooting the ball." I was like, "What, dude?" Like, if we're in layup lines and he wasn't around, I'd be in a great mood in the game. And as soon as he walked in the arena, I'd get like the worst anxiety. And I never had anxiety playing. I just like, I couldn't do it. It was something about me that was just like, it was a struggle inside that was like, yo, I can't find a way to function.
I mean, that right there is the ultimate, to me, reason why he should be compelled or however somehow coerced to sell that team, because when you've got your own players feeling anxious when you're around and they can't perform to their best level simply because you're in the building, like that tells me it's counterproductive for you to own a team, because they're not going to be able to succeed at the highest level with you as the owner, or you visibly just in their sight, and that just the guy shouldn't own a team. But the problem with that is, historically he's a very stubborn businessman, and they can nudge him, they can try to make his life miserable, but he might literally fight that to the death before he gives up that team, you would think, because what can owners or what can players do to sort of make his life miserable enough to the point where he sells his team? I don't think is there an answer to that?
Well, there's no answer to that, Izzy, but I think all this negative publicity for him, now every time he walks outside, Izzy, people are going to say, that's the guy right there. And I don't think anyone wants to live with that type of scrutiny under what you have said. The only way that you can, I think, even try and live an almost normal life, because it will not be normal from this point on, is to actually have remorse and seek help. Now, that's completely up to him, I understand, but I wouldn't want to be that person walking into a restaurant and people start snickering or basically, like he did Barron, heckling him. So it's a lot of stuff going on here where just by those words, Izzy, that have come out of his mouth, he's starting to feel the wrath of that right now, because now he has taken precedence now. It's top stories every single day until something happens, until Adam Silver makes a decision. It's going to be the topic of every newscast, every paper. This is it kind of reminds me of say Joe Paterno. Now, say I'm talking about the media scrutiny. I think it actually put Joe into his grave. I know Joe was older, but the heaviness on his heart over all that stuff that took place at Penn State, I think this is the same type of situation where this heaviness, no one needs to do anything. This man's going to live with this until the end of his time.
That's actually a really good point about the sort of the intense media scrutiny, which is different now, and people sort of having this license. It would seem to say things to people, to act out toward people, and I don't think that Donald Sterling would probably even feel safe if he went, especially now when this is all so fresh and so new, would even feel safe going into his own building. Or he can go into the Staples Center to watch his own team. And I don't know if that's ever going to go away, because the first time he does show up, it's going to be a major media event. And there's going to be people that want to do or say something to that man. So maybe that in itself is going to be what compels him to sell the team, because he might never feel comfortable being around again. And that's something he would never probably want to experience. But we're going to move on after this quick break and talk about the other games that actually happened that didn't have this whirling controversy around them. We'll be back in a minute.
Someday, people will say, I knew Ty, Ryan, Chase, Dylan, when he was kart racing in 38th place. Someday, people will say, he's on a roll, on fire. Someday, people will shake their heads and say, man, that kid sure did grow up fast. Names are made here. The NASCAR Nationwide Series at Iowa. Sunday at 1:30 Eastern on ESPN.
Everybody's got to play well. As I told our guys, it's not about what you're doing. It's about plays you make. It's not about how you're playing. It's about who's getting loose balls, who's getting rebounds, who's doing all those things. If we hang our hat on whether our shot goes in or not, then you're just in the wrong business.
That was Kevin McHale after his Houston Rockets went down 3-1. Losing 123-120 to the Portland Trailblazers in overtime yesterday, Bruce. That was a close one, obviously, and it was sort of varied. You had James Harden not really shooting particularly great, but he and Dwight Howard still managed to combine for 53 points. You had Chandler Parsons starting off hot and finishing with 26 points, 8 rebounds, and you had Troy Daniels, that rookie, coming off the bench hitting 4 threes. and giving you 17, and yet you're still not able to pull this one out. Was there anything that stood out in particular to what Portland did? Because it didn't, they didn't have, other than they had some balance. They had 3 guys score 20, at least 20 in that starting lineup. But in terms of adjusting from that Game 3 loss where they paid a lot more attention to LaMarcus Aldridge, how did Portland pull this one out?
Well, Izzy, it's more about the team playing the defense, I think, of Wesley Matthews. I think his energy, Izzy, on the defensive side has truly, given them something more and giving them some more of consistency. They get more consistency out of their group as compared to what Houston is doing. I have to say this, you brought up a great point in how, Chandler Parsons, he started off hot, but what happened in the second half? What Houston is doing, they're surprising guys, as you said, with the rookie knocking down the 4 threes. When you get into the playoff mode and you surprise a team one game, then you got to have more than that. You got to have some type of consistency in your offense, in your group, that you're not dependent upon somebody having a uh-oh moment. I think Portland adjusted to that, and because they did it via defense and trying to get a hand up and being more physical, I think that's why they were able to pull this victory out at home.
Well, look, to me, these are 2 teams that are very close to begin with. And, the only reason I picked Portland to win this series was because they were playing better coming down the stretch of the regular season, because they had more healthy bodies and they had a better chemistry, and Dwight had only played in 3 games down the stretch after missing a chunk of games. So now that they're both kind of finding their rhythm, it's really a coin flip. Like, either team could win any game after, I would say maybe after that Game 1 performance. It seemed like Houston was a little bit back on track. They definitely were in Game 3. They seemed fine yesterday. It was just a matter of Portland's right there with them. Houston wasn't going to, churn up the defense, because that's just not what they do. They're not a particularly great defensive team. They can protect the paint. They can do that with Dwight and Omar Asik if they want to. But they're not necessarily a great defensive team, in large part because of their perimeter defense. So it really is just a really close contest. But I want to sort of move forward and just think, if Dwight Howard goes out in the first round for the second year as a Western Conference player, is this something that you say to yourself, I let down if you're Dwight Howard, or is it something where you say to yourself, okay, you got to have the perspective, we're in a loaded Western Conference, we ran into a hot team, and we're probably still a player away, or at least an adjustment away from being an elite team? Like, how do you think Dwight would look at this if he gets knocked out after this round?
Well, I think that, one thing you didn't say there is to do an introspective look and see what he could do better for his ball club. I don't think Dwight's going to look at this and look at it as a failure on his behalf. He might say it, but I don't think he's going to have that effect, or I should say that thought process to really take it upon himself, Izzy. I just don't think he's built that way. I think he's more about, all the benefits of the game and all the wonderful things the game can afford him. But the love of the game for him, as far as I'm concerned, is not there from a standpoint that he's a multiple Defensive Player of the Year recipient. And you mean to tell me that there's no way that you can come up with some type of system or experience on what you've done in the past to be this dominant guy on the defensive end for them? I just don't see it that way. And had he not had the defensive accolades to go with it, Izzy, I wouldn't say this. We see that he's doing a better job of scoring where he's become consistent, but I don't think that helps their ball club. I think their ball club is about the ball movement and attacking style that they have, and it's not a half-court team, but you have to be a half-court defensive team in the playoffs, and that's what you're missing right now. I don't think Dwight's the type of individual to look at himself and say, you know what, I let this team down. They built a lot of things as far as on me, put things on my shoulder in order for us to, gain that goal of a championship, and I just don't think he's built that way, is he?
I think hopefully he doesn't look at it as, hey, this team needs to go to me more. They need a point guard to help James Harden create. Patrick Beverley's a nice defensive point guard, can knock down some shots, but they need a point guard to take some of the offensive pressure off of James, and they probably need, either a really improvement from Terrence Jones at the 4 spot, or they need to get themselves more of a, sort of a classic, maybe, I don't know if stretch 4 is necessary, but somebody that can work next to Dwight, but that's a little bit better overall, whether it be defensively, because we saw how LaMarcus Aldridge lit up their 4 men the first 2 games, or just an all-around better player. But I think they're still a player or 2 away. So hopefully Dwight doesn't see this as, I should have been able to do more. They should have given me the ball more, or the responsibility needs to be on me because, frankly, this team is not yet complete. So we'll see how that series finishes off, or when it finishes off. It would seem like Portland's in pretty good control. They're up 3-1, but we move on to a Raptors-Nets series that's tied at 2.
Well, the last 4 minutes is normally where we feel very comfortable. We just got out of character there. We didn't score, and that's something that we've always thought we can execute both ends, defensively and offensively, and we didn't. We were trying to do it individually instead of making a play for a teammate. We missed a couple shots that we've made in the past, so the fourth quarter, we just couldn't execute or make a shot when we were wide open.
That was Nets coach Jason Kidd after his team lost 87-79. To the Raptors, as the Raptors even that series at 2, take back home court advantage in this 3-6 matchup that's kind of compelling, even though, it looked for a while, let's say for at least, the Game 3 and parts of Game 4, where the Nets were just more the bully, more the veteran team, they could physically impose their will and really frustrate the Raptors. It worked well in Game 3. That first game was probably more of a factor of, the Toronto Raptors playoff jitters and not having been there before. So, I think it looked like the Nets were going to close this game out. You heard Jason Kidd talking about it. They were tied there and couldn't close out down the stretch. It seemed out of character for them, but it also gives that Toronto team some confidence. How much do you think this swayed the series at all? Are the Raptors now in control of this one?
Well, I don't think the Raptors are in control necessarily, Izzy. I think this is one of the cases of a team trying to win a game early and not sticking to their game plan. You had a lot of hero ball for the Brooklyn Nets yesterday. And what I mean by hero ball, I'm going to take it upon myself to will us to win. And you didn't have the ball movement. You didn't have the attacking basket. I saw a lot of guys selling for jump shots in that first quarter, Izzy, when Toronto jumped out on that big lead. And it just seemed to me that Toronto was playing more with a purpose as compared to Brooklyn. Brooklyn was relying on the fact that they're at home. We're up 2-1. This team's done tonight. No, you still got to compete just as hard when you get a victory in the playoffs than any other time. That's where I talk about is how you respect whatever takes place. When you lose, you usually see a team come back and win because they respect the fact that, okay, we need to bounce back from this loss. But it's really hard for those teams that got a victory to kind and conjure up the same mentality that they had when they lost the game, or the feelings that they had or that they put into the game because of what has transpired as far as the series being at that time 2-1. So, I think you look at Joe Johnson. He didn't get his shots last night. He didn't have an effective game, and that's something that you just kind of worry, like, well, how could that happen? Well, it happens because guys tend to start to think about the other things and looking past the team. But Toronto, when I saw Kyle Lowry limping out there, there's no way that he shouldn't have had the defensive pressure on him from once he got the ball in the half court. They just kind of allowed them to come into place and do whatever they wanted to on offense, and that's why I think Brooklyn, they started out that way, down so much.
Well, I mean, with Joe, they were definitely doubling him a lot and giving him extra attention, so he was making the right play, especially early on in the game. I do think, Darren Williams was probably a little bit of that hero ball sort of late in the game. He had a good first quarter, but not much else. He was 4 for 12. Outside of Paul Pierce, they didn't really have too many answers. Paul had 22 points, 9 of 14 shooting, looked good, and was even getting to the rim. But overall, it just seemed like that desperation that the Raptors had sort of was the winner in this one. I remember Dwayne Casey telling us on Friday when I was there for Game 3 that Amir Johnson in particular, if they're going to have Paul Pierce on them, he has to dominate Paul Pierce, whether it be offensively with his size or on the offensive boards or the defensive boards, whatever the case may be, he has to make them pay for making that switch or making that decision to play small. And Amir, for the first time in this series, had that type of game. He had 17 points. Didn't really dominate on the boards, only had 5 boards, but there was a lot of battling going on, and that's why guys like Grievous Vasquez could, run in and grab 6 boards of his own because, there was so many big bodies down there fighting that you have other guys sort of come in and swoop in for the rebound. So I thought Amir Johnson did a great job. Kyle Lowry, Kyle's going to have trouble in this series against this long defense with the size that they have. He's finding trouble getting around the help defense. He's finding trouble finishing in the paint, but somehow find a way to give you 22 points. That's what I love about Kyle is he just finds a way. Like he's this little sort of like bumper pool. Like he's one of the balls in the bumper pool, just bouncing off of everything and just finding a way to make an impact. So I love the Raptors. Like I'm following. I'm really liking the way DeMar DeRozan has a passion for the game and for his franchise. And, I would like to see him get to the rim a little bit more, but his build is not that strong. So if he can still pull up and hit some of those jumpers, man, he's really effective and he's so athletic. So I give the Raptors a chance. I picked them to win this series to start in 7, and they're finally looking like a team that's gathering some momentum here. But do we stick with the Eastern Conference and go with the Bulls and the Wizards?
It was tough, disappointed. I think we're all disappointed with the game today, but we just got to keep our head up. It's first to 4. I think they executed really well. We turned the ball over. Just the start of the game was really bad.
That was Joakim Noah after his team lost 98-89 to the Wizards. Despite the Wizards not having Nene, who was serving a 1-game suspension, Trevor Ariza filled in, came up huge with 30 points in this game, and that was a missed opportunity for the Chicago Bulls. They could have gone back home, had the home court advantage again after losing the first 2 on the at home in Chicago. I don't know, Bruce, if you could sort of judge this for me. When you have a guy that's missing on the other team, especially an important piece like Nene, is there a sense of sort of an exhale? Is there a sense where, okay, we got this, and maybe there's an overconfidence, whereas on the other end, that they're just sort of boiling and they're really upset and they're going to come out on, just fired up to try to make up for that missing person. It's almost a negative to the team that, for Chicago, that Nene got suspended because they had to, you knew how Washington was going to come out in this game.
Yeah, I like the way you're thinking right now, Izzy. I can't say I like the way you think normally, but, I like where you're going now, the letdown. And there is a little bit. Yeah, I'm sure Chicago went into it thinking like, hey, you know what? One of their top players is gone right now. We're going to have a different go at this team. And what happened was Washington hit them in the mouth 3 times and then punched them in the nose and made their eyes water. So as they're going forward in that first quarter, Izzy, it was like, hey, Chicago, did you know it was a game today? And the fact that I talked about how you respond to victories, Chicago didn't respond well to this victory. I didn't like the tone of Joakim Noah. I didn't hear the swagger in his voice. What I heard is someone that is almost as if he surrendered into the fact that he's playing against a good team. Now he's starting to say they have a lot of weapons there. And this is what happens when you take away a certain piece from a team. Someone else steps up. You don't know who it's going to be at that particular moment, but someone steps up. And it's just so good to see that it is one of their veterans that they depended on this season. And Trevor Ariza, the fact that he does have a championship ring with the Lakers, he has a playoff experience. He's one of those players, he leads by example. He's not a very talkative individual, but he does it on the defensive end. He's long, and I like what they did with Mike Dunleavy. The fact that they took him out of the game, this is a young man who had a career high the game before, and he was non-existent. That's the issue you have with the Bulls right now as far as not getting consistency out of the whole group. Maybe you get it from one guy, or maybe you get it from another, but you can't afford to go through droughts like that. You need a better effort from everyone when it comes to going against a team that may be less than what they normally are due to his suspension to a teammate.
Well, the guy who had it going for Chicago was Taj Gibson, who had 32 points on 13 of 16 shooting, but, the rest of that group, Kirk Heinrich, 3 of 12, Jimmy Butler, 5 of 14. It's pretty classic. Bulls, offensively is always going to be their struggle. Joe Kim hadn't had a very good series coming into this game. He had a good game here. A decent game. 10 points, 15 rebounds, 5 assists, but not enough. And basically the difference in this game was the turnovers. The Bulls committed 16 turnovers, gave up 29 points off those turnovers. That's the second most they've given up all season long, while the Wizards committed 6, and that's the fewest the Bulls have forced in a game this season. So there's clearly a comfort level in that Wizards offense against this normally maniacal Chicago defense, especially in a situation like this. I do think Chicago's a little too proud to let this thing go in 5 in Chicago, but when Washington gets back to D.C., I think they wrap this one up in 6. But let's move on to preview a couple of tonight's games.
What happened in coming down the final couple
Vince
of
made
minutes?
a shot. Manu guarded him, did it well, and Vince made a shot. Give him credit. There was no breakdown or anything like that. Manu was right there, did everything he could. Vince knocked it down.
Did you have the offensive execution that you were looking for in this game?
Sure. Both teams played well. It was a heck of a game. Both teams made mistakes. Both teams did some things well, and it came down to one shot. We made a shot, and then they made a shot.
That's Greg Popovich with the both teams played hard routine after his Spurs lost to the Mavericks, 109-108. And, we talked about one crazy old man in Donald Sterling. Vince Carter's an old man, a little crazy, but in a totally different way. He hit that game winner, and I think most people were shocked just the fact that, he was in that position, just the fact that he hit that shot, and, he doesn't have a history of hitting a ton of clutch shots, and here he is at this point in his career, just still having those moments. Like, that had to be pretty cool for him and for his teammates, Bruce. But more importantly, how are the Mavericks doing this? Please explain.
Well, I think you look at Monte Ellis, Izzy. Monte Ellis has, even if he's not making a shot, Izzy, he's so fast and he attacks the basket, you have to collapse. But in that fourth quarter, he was 5 for 5 from the field. He ignited that run that they went on where it was nothing that the Spurs could do at that particular moment, whether it was him pulling up for a jump shot. One thing the Spurs are doing is because of his quickness, you're saying, okay, we're going to go under the pick and roll. Well, they went under the pick and roll, and he stopped behind the pick and roll, and he shoots the jump shot. And it's one of those deals, Izzy, where you get a player like that. As now he understands how to win. Now he understands as compared to when he was in Golden State, Monte wasn't looking to pass to no one. But now he's matured more where now he understands that, hey, I can do even more by getting rid of the basketball once I could get guys to commit on defense. I think that's one of the reasons that they've been able to really do a good job. And you look at who's doing it, it's more the youthful guys for Dallas that are having a huge impact. Now, Dirk has not had one of the series that we're accustomed to seeing him have because, give it to it. He's older. Tim is older, and they both cancel out one another. But it's the others that are doing things for the Mavericks as compared to the Spurs getting a consistent production out of, say, Tony Parker. Where's Kawhi Leonard been? These are the things that, Pop is trying to figure out. He wants guys to get out there and do their job, and that means Danny Gray, knock down an open jump shot when you get one. Marco had a decent game, but he needs to be more consistent as well. And Patty Mills, we sang his praises, but as of right now, he hasn't been able to find that rhythm, find that touch, because Dallas is keying in on the three-point shooters of San Antonio, and they're truly bringing the fight to the Spurs, whereas throughout the season you didn't see this. But again, I talk about this as being, a 1A matchup. No, it's just the Battle of Texas.
Well, this can't be about offense for the Spurs, Bruce. Like, you can't ask Bellinelli or Patty Mills and say, hey, we need to do better offensively. They shot 54% in that game and still lost. And when you look at the offensive numbers, they're pretty darn similar. It would be consistent with a 1-point game and the fact that one team won on a miracle shot because, the Mavs 25 assists, the Spurs 26. The Mavs 35 rebounds, the Spurs 36. The Spurs 44 of 81 for 54%, the Mavs 42 of 82 for 51%. This, to me, if you're the Spurs, comes down to a defense.